So good morning, everyone. So nice to see all of you today. As we were discussing previously, today's topic is super important and relevant since March is recognized as National Nutrition Month. So the goal is really to raise awareness about the transformative powers of healthy food choices and physical activity habits. So in today's event, we're going to be talking about the key macronutrients in a daily diet, some healthy lifestyle behaviors, and different dietary patterns. And we'll also speak about food labels and their key features, a list of ingredients, and how we can effectively read them. And then finally, we're going to go into a discussion about different strategies for effective long-term weight loss management. And so I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Michaela Lencova. She is a certified nutrition specialist student graduating from the NYU Steinhardt School of Nutrition and Dietetics program, and she aspires to become a registered dietitian. She's currently completing her fieldwork internship at Weill Cornell Medicine CTSC Nutrition and Metabolic Research Core. And Michaela assists the RD in nutrition research design, the implementation of nutrition interventions, and in the development of nutrition education lessons, particularly for adult weight management. She combines the science of nutrition, approach of self-awareness, and sports performance to help individuals meet their goals and feel empowered in their bodies. So without further ado, I will pass the floor over to Michaela, and feel free to get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Allegra, for such a great introduction. Hi, good morning, everyone. So here I'm going to share my screen with you. That's possible right here. Please let me know if you see that. It should appear right now.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So again, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today, and I'm happy to be able to discuss nutrition and health topics on the National Month of Nutrition of March. So Allegra introduced me, but very quickly, again, my name is Michaela Lencova, and I'm a nutrition and dietetics student at NYU, New York University, aspiring to become a registered dietitian. And here at Weill Cornell, I'm completing my fieldwork at Nutrition and Metabolic Research Core Department. And obviously, one of my biggest passions is everything related to nutrition and health. That has actually brought me all the way from Slovakia, my home country, to the United States to study and work in this field of science. And related to that, I like skiing, working out, doing yoga, so pretty much anything that involves movement. Okay, so firstly, today we will review some basic information about macronutrients and different eating patterns. Then we will discuss nutrition food labels that can be found on most of the food and beverage packaging. And we will cover some information and tips on how to read these labels more effectively. And finally, we will talk about a few strategies, how not to only lose the weight, but also how to maintain those results in the long-term run. So healthy eating, it's a huge topic, and eating seems simple, but it's actually pretty complex. So if you go to a physician or to me as a dietitian, I might start wondering what we are shooting for, whether it's a weight loss or less overeating or a healthy eating, or we're shooting for a longer and better life. And then we would stick it with a big picture. And I would point out that eating is just one behavior in a healthy cascade of exercising regularly that leads to better stress management, and sleep would lead to better food decisions and more energy and less chronic disease and so on. And if it's weight loss that we are after, then it's very easy conceptually because you don't eat as much and you move more. But the problem is that it's not so easy keeping this up with this energy balance in the real world. So here we have an energy balance and how it actually relates to weight management. Well, simply put, calories in equals calories out. And that is how you maintain your equilibrium. Energy balance is very important. So when you consume too much energy and burn too little, your body stores that excess energy as body fat. And being overweight increases your risk for several cancers, including colon, pancreatic, or postmenopausal breast cancer. And the thing is that in industrialized countries, we are surrounded by limitless supplies of inexpensive, tasty, supersized, high-calorie foods, which can be seen here on the left side of the equation. And on the other side of the energy balance equation, there is expenditure. And we will zoom on this one a little bit closer in a minute. So activity has also changed, as our generation has severe case of sitting disease. Nightly TV, spectacular video games, commutes by car, buses or subways, and we have all those fancy moving sidewalks and escalators. And most of us now are actually sitting knowledge workers. So our culture is pushing us towards the easy button instead of making our days harder. So let's take a closer look here at the energy expenditure. First, to measure anything, whether it's a volume, mass, or weight, or temperature, we have a specific units for each of those measurements, right? So for temperature, for example, we have Fahrenheit. For weight, we have pounds. And here, for energy, we use calories. So calorie is a unit of energy. And in nutrition, calories refer to energy people get from the food and drinks they consume, and also the energy they use in the physical activity. So here it may be worthwhile looking at the graph here as I speak. So we can see that we have four main elements that make up energy expenditure. We have something that is called basal metabolic rate, or BMR. We have thermic effect of the food that you can see under yellow color with digestion. Then we have something that is called NEAT, that is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And also we have exercise or EAT as exercise activity thermogenesis. So let's break these down a little. So for BMR, our basal metabolic rate, it's the sum of calories we burn a day without moving. So just think about like a good old lazy duvet day. And all of these activities includes basic functions of your body to maintain life, such as breathing or circulating of blood, or organ functions and basic neurological functions. So for most of the people, this sits somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 calories. However, this is totally dependent on person's weight and age or height and body composition. So it's muscle to fat ratio. And actually, we should never eat under this number, as we would be malnourishing our body, putting it in very stressed state, and our body would at some point start having to break down muscle to utilize this as a fuel or energy, which could cause a lot of metabolic and health issues. Then we have the thermic effect of the food as a digestion, and this basically refers to an increase in metabolic rate, which is the rate when your body burns calories. And it occurs after ingestion of food. So our body, more specifically our digestive system, uses this energy or calories to digest, absorb, and store nutrients from the food. And it actually takes a lot of work and energy to get all those nutrients passed through your intestinal walls. Then we have our EAT, or exercise activity thermogenesis, as you can see in a blue color on the top right. And this is our category of exercise, workout, and sport. So interestingly, and often surprisingly to many, you can see here that exercise only actually counts for roughly 5, 10, or 15%. It really depends of your total daily energy expenditure. And when we exercise, it's generally 30 to 90 minutes. Just think about that. So therefore, it isn't a particularly large part of your day, right? Well, however, it's still very important and crucial. And there is a lot of scientific evidence that exercising for at least 150 minutes to 300 minutes a week of moderate intensity has a positive effect on your overall health. And those are also recommendations to include at least like 150 minutes of moderate intensity workout a week. And then we have this category called NEAT, or non-exercise activity. And it's the second daily highest energy output source, and actually the one that you can affect the most. You can't really change your BMR that much, And even if you put on a few kilograms of muscle, your BMR will only increase by 20 plus calories per day or so. However, increasing your NEAT or non-exercise activity can increase your daily energy output by hundreds, if not by thousands of calories per day or per week. So NEAT includes anything which isn't really exercise or training, and it burns calories, such as activities like walking or casual cycle ride when you take a city bike, right? Or gardening, playing in the park with your kids or any other kids, or any kinds of housework or do-it-yourselves like washing the dishes, for example. And also, very importantly, things that we don't really get to think about, like body motions, such as fidgeting. This is where we burn a lot of calories and they fall under this category. So let's start with a question that I most often get about eating. What's the best diet for losing weight? Well, I'm not surprised people are confused because we're getting bombarded daily by many new diets or detoxes, superfoods, and not to even mention the Hollywood star that just started that diet. However, no research has shown convincingly that one commercial diet trumps all the rest. The only thing that predicted success in head-to-head trials was how well you stuck to whichever diet you picked. So to reframe this, our society lurches from diet to diet looking for some magic formula. But the thing is that there is no magic formula. It's more about a pattern. Instead of obsessing about exact composition of diet, science tells us to choose the one we like the best and actually stick to it. And one of the meta-analysis in 2015 was looking at what bumped the success of commercial weight loss diets. And it showed it wasn't less carbs or less fats. It was more of a structure and more of in-person social support. So each commercial diet has its own magic formula of what we call macronutrients. So low carbs, high protein, low fat, sugar, and so on. And they typically have a story to go with it, right? So you can eat like a caveman with paleo diet or use a scoring system, or it's pre-packed, or some famous doctor took it or whatever. So I suppose my two main messages here with macronutrients are that I think we spend too much time and too much energy focusing on them. And second, it's really more about a quality than quantity. So we have carbs, right? Low carbs, well, carbs can be healthy in their complex form, such as can be found in fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and not so healthy in their simple form, like free sugars and refined starches. You know, let's face it, carbs taste awesome, and our society tends to overeat them. So people who restrict their intake naturally tend to lose weight. So how about lowering the sugar? Well, if I had to pick one word to describe the sugar in industrialized societies, it would be sneaky. So much sugar has worked its way into our diets. Many people drink 8 or more teaspoons of sugar in their drinks without knowing this. And the average American intake is approximately 20 teaspoons of sugar a day, which is obviously too much. And it's the obvious sweets like chocolate and candy bars, but also there's a lot of hidden sugar, like this sneaky sugar, that is also found in things that we think of as healthy, right? Like morning cereals or granola bars and fruit juices. And when high sugar contributes to excess calories, that is when we seem to get into trouble. So American Heart Association suggests to limit added sugar to no more than six teaspoons of sugar for women and no more than 9 teaspoons of sugar for most of men. And bottom line is that there's no nutritional need or benefit that comes from eating added sugar. So here we can take a look at the diabetes prevention trial. When patients are diagnosed with a pre-diabetes, the first thing they do is to drop sugar from their diet. However, when we look at the diabetes prevention trials, it was less about sugar restriction and more about this healthy cascade, as we mentioned, right? It was more of active half an hour activity a day or losing 5 to 7% of your weight or eating less sugar, or eating less saturated fats, and eating more fiber that reduce the risk of progression to diabetes by 58%. So how about the low fat? Well, I think our story has changed on a fat from all bad to, again, more of continuum. So here we have our trans fats, right? So it's mostly like fried foods, many packaged baked goods or processed foods. And these are not so good, and we really try to reduce those. And then we have our saturated fats, mostly found in dairy or red meat, plant oils like coconut or palm. And these seems not so good in excess, but good in moderation. We should eat no more than 10% of our daily calories, which counts for 22 grams approximately for a person consuming 2,000 calories a day. And then we have our monosaturated fats, or MUFA. And the Mediterranean diet, which I'll discuss in a second, is pretty high in those MUFA ones. So think of avocados, nuts, or seeds, or olive oil, very importantly, dark chocolate. And all of these shows a lot of health benefits. And finally, we have our polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFA, that are the longer chain fats found in oily fishes such as salmon. So you actually recognize these under more common name omega-3 and 6. So those are your omega-3 and 6s. And early trials showed that some reduction in cardiac events were there. And also there is a benefit on eating those and no harm. So suggestion is to have at least 2 servings a week. So a serving of salmon in the beginning of the week, and maybe a serving of black cod towards the end. And actually, in general, people seem to do better when they replace saturated fats with their MUFA and PUFA fats. So let's talk about the protein. So how about the high protein diets? Again, it's more about the quality than quantity. And protein can come in different packages with different health effects. So say comparing a high salt ham steak versus salmon steak, or lentils, or handful of almonds. And most data points that if you eat healthy protein, such as white meat, nuts, or beans, or fish, you do better. So especially if you spread it through the day, perhaps most importantly for breakfast. And another important benefit of eating protein is that it increases your satiety to greater extent than carbohydrates and fats. So therefore, it may facilitate a reduction in energy consumption. So yes, studies show that protein is the most filling macronutrient, and adequate protein makes you full. So when we think of protein, it's actually a large category of molecules, right? They give structure and support to your cells and are necessary for immune function, movement, chemical reactions, or hormone synthesis, and so on. So all these proteins are made of tiny building blocks called amino acids. And 9 of these are considered essential, meaning your body needs them, but can't make them on their own. So you need to get them in your diet. And animal-based foods such as meat or poultry, fish, eggs, everything that I mentioned, tend to be good sources of a complete protein, while plant-based foods such as fruits, vegetables, grain, nuts, and seeds often lack 1 or more of those essential amino acids. So, which is not such a big issue for people who avoid meat. They just have to keep in mind to combine the plant-based proteins, different sources of them. And this combining of 2 or more foods with incomplete protein forms what we call complementary protein. And luckily enough, they don't need to be eaten in one dish, but you can also spread them throughout the day as long as you supply them. So here are some examples of how you can combine your meals to meet your daily goals. So for example, having beans and rice or tortillas, and peanut butter sandwich, or tofu with rice, or maybe hummus with pita bread. And also for some vegetarians who include dairy in their eating, they can include grilled cheese sandwich, right? Or maybe yogurt with nuts, or macaroni and cheese. And let's take a look, where can we find all these different macronutrients, right? So our carbs, fats, and proteins. And here we have our food label. So nutrition food labels are issued by regulations of FDA that required changes on them based on updated scientific information. So the new information is based on research and also input from public. So people look at food labels for a variety of reasons. But whatever the reason, many consumers would like to know how to use this information more effectively and easily. So let's break this down a little. When looking at the nutrition food label or nutrition fact label, first, let's take a look at the number of serving in a package. So it's under number 1, all the way up on the top. And this is the serving in a package and a serving size. And actually, a lot of people skip this section, but it's very important because serving sizes are made to make it easier for you to compare similar foods. And also they're provided in familiar units such as cups or pieces, and also in a metric amounts like numbers of grams, etc. And the serving size reflects the amount that people typically eat or drink. Careful, it's not the recommendation of how much you should eat or drink. So again, it just reflects the amount. And it's important to realize that all nutrients amounts are shown on the label, including the number of calories, refer to the size of the serving. So again, pay attention to serving size, especially how many servings there are in a food package. Then next point, number 2, you have your calories per serving, right? So again, these are related to amounts per serving, not amounts per package. And then in a third section, it's important to remember our recommendations that we're going to touch upon later on in this conversation. So less saturated fats, less sodium, and less added sugar that are associated with adverse health effects. And generally, people tend to consume too much of these. On the other hand, dietary fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium are the nutrients on the label that Americans generally do not get the recommended amount of. And eating diet high in dietary fiber can increase the frequency of your bowel movements. It can lower your blood glucose and cholesterol levels and reduce calorie intake. On the other side, diet high in vitamin D, calcium, and iron, and also potassium can reduce your risk of developing osteoporosis, anemia, and high blood pressure. So these are good ones. And then when you see like all the way on the right side, we have our percent daily value, which is the percentage of a daily value for each nutrient in a serving of the food. So this information shows how much a nutrient in serving of this food contributes to your total daily diet. And this helps you determine if the food is high or low in that particular nutrient. So as a general rule, 5% of daily value or less of this nutrient per serving is considered low, and 20% or more of this nutrient per serving is considered high. So let's take a look at the dietary guidelines. So USDA developed standard recommendation for Americans called the Dietary Guidelines for Americans of 2020 to 2025. And it's based on scientific evidence on health promoting diets and provides advice on what to eat and drink to meet nutrient needs to promote your health and help prevent chronic disease. And here are some overarching goals. So first goal is to follow a healthy diet pattern.
How many times have you been out?
At every life stage. Second goal is to customize and enjoy nutrient-dense food and beverage choices to reflect personal preferences, cultural traditions, and budgetary considerations. Furthermore, there should be a focus on meeting food groups' needs with nutrient-dense foods and beverages and stay within calorie limits. So, and also it's very important, as I mentioned before, to limit foods and beverages that are high in added sugars, saturated fats, and sodium. So for added sugars and saturated fats, these should be limited to no more than 10% of your calories per day. And for sodium intake, it should be no more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. However, reality is a little different, right? So as we can see here, for every category, these recommendations are not met. For both men and women, more than half of the population over-exceeded the recommended limit of more than 10% of your total daily calories for added sugars and saturated fats, as you can see here, and they exceeded limit of 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. So it's important to keep under those limits. So let's talk about the dietary patterns. And there are some diets or dietary eating patterns that show good results in people with some disease, right? And we will discuss them more in detail, but DASH diet, for example, which is recommended for people with high blood pressure, shows to drop the number in systolic pressure by 5 to 11 points. Or another diet called low glycemic index diet drops the measurement for blood sugar over time for people with diabetes by 0.5 percentage points. And then we have some sustainable dietary eating patterns, right? Or more of a lifestyle for some, such as vegetarianism or Mediterranean diet. Well, so what is DASH diet? DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, DASH. And DASH diet is a healthy eating plan designed to help treat or prevent high blood pressure, right? And this is a common condition and a big health risk factor since it puts you at risk for heart disease and stroke, which are actually the leading causes of death in the United States. And nearly 50% of Americans suffer with hypertension, with a greater percentage of men than women. And only 1 in 4 adults with hypertension have their condition under control. And one of the most common factors that contributes to high blood pressure is a diet high in salt, fat, and cholesterol. So that is where DASH diet comes into play, which includes foods that are rich in potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And these are nutrients that help control blood pressure. And also it includes or actually limits food sources that are high in our sodium, saturated fat, and added sugars. So here on the right side for better visualization, you can see what is good to eat and what is good to limit. So again, our good vegetables, fruits, or fish, some poultry, especially white meat, right? Maybe include some nuts and seeds into your diet, and definitely try to limit those of fatty meats, like when you have any processed salamis or salty ham, and full fat dairy, right, which is high in saturated fats, or try to really limit some sweets that are definitely high in added sugars and lower your sodium intake. Okay, so here we have our vegetarianism, and we have several types of vegetarians. Some people eat dairy foods, others may choose to include eggs, while others abstain entirely from any food product that comes from an animal. Those are called vegans. One thing that they all have in common, though, is that they rely primarily on plant-based foods for their nutritional needs. And people choose vegetarian diets for many reasons, including personal preference and health concerns. And the data for vegetarianism has largely come from cohort studies and not just some random trials, right? And people show that they do better. And it reduces the risk of heart attack, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, certain types of cancer, and obesity. And also it's hard not to conclude that a diet rich in plant-based, unprocessed foods or minimally processed foods is a smart diet. And of course, many people make an excellent point that the burden on our planet is less with vegetarian or vegan or local diet. So we're really buying more ultra processed foods and packaged foods that can be eaten anywhere, right? And maybe there's an opportunity now for healthier eating and better relationships by encouraging creating meals with your family and friends. Okay, so if there's no magic formula, is there a diet that actually does work? And I think the answer is yes. The diet that is more about the culture and small behaviors, the one that is not focused on weight loss, but more on healthy outcomes like less cancer or less heart disease, less dementia, and promoting longer and better life. The diet that has the most robust evidence is the Mediterranean diet, which instead of food rules or absolutes, is more about the moderation. So less meat, more veggies, or fruits for dessert. To give a better example for you, think about shopping at the market, right? Or at least at the outer aisles of the grocery stores, where you have all the fresh fruits and vegetables or organic fresh made bread, right? Not the processed foods that are for sale in the inner aisles, which like the canned meals or frozen convenient dinners. And actually, it's called Mediterranean diet, but it's more of a lifestyle. So think of that summer in a European region, right? Like Greece or Italy, that traditionally includes a lot of physical activity, regular meals, and good social support. And here on the right side, we have this pyramid for better imagination or visualization again, where all the way down on the bottom, you see all this physical activity and people who really enjoy their meals with others. And then above that, that's our main source of the nutrients, our main source of the food that should come from fruits, vegetables, grains, olive oil, legumes, or some good herbs and spices. And here we have our fish and seafood that, as I mentioned before, we should eat them often, but at least 2 times per week. And a little bit less of the poultry, eggs and cheese and yogurt. Definitely those should be included in your diet, but really more in the moderation portions, like daily to weekly. And also the Mediterranean diet or this Mediterranean lifestyle is very good because it doesn't really restrict anything, but it tells you to limit things such as meats and sweets. And also wine here in a moderation, of course, is allowed. And really, I'm putting big emphasis on drinking plenty of water a day. So just to support this even further, right? US News annually ranks different diets based on input from a panel of diet, nutrition, and health experts. And for this year, they evaluated 40 different diets, where the Mediterranean diet took the first place and is followed by DASH diet on a second place, as you can see. So let's continue and shift from diets to healthy behaviors that affect our eating by looking at National Weight Control Registry. So NWCR was established in 1994 in the University of Colorado, and they administered and follow up with annual questionnaires to more than 10,000 people, more women than men, who lost quite a bit of weight and kept it off for more than a year. Okay, and it's not surprising that 98% said they modified their food intake in some way, and 94% increased their activity levels. But there is no one magic formula, right? There is no ratio of these carbohydrates to fats to protein. But there are some strategies that actually participants reported, and most of them restricted some foods, some counted calories, others ate all regular foods and they just limited their quantities. 78% ate breakfast every day, and the majority watched less than 10 hours of TV and ate out at least 3 times a week or no more than that. And these people generally exceeded the prescribed half an hour a day of activity, averaging to 1 hour a day, mostly walking. And as you can recall from our earlier slides, this is what falls under that NEAT or nutrition, non-exercise activity category of our energy expenditure. The one category that you can actually do most with. And nearly all registry members indicated that weight loss led to improvements in their energy levels, physical mobility, general mood, self-confidence, and physical health. So let's take a look at some strategies or small changes that can we actually do. And there are so many ways we can reach our goals. Well, feedback loops seems very important, right? So losing weight is one thing, but it seems like the trickier part is, at least for 80% of us, is to keeping it off. So weighting yourself and using this as a small nudge in your daily food decisions is an example. In our NWCR subjects, 75% of them weighted themselves weekly, 36% daily. And they looked at the data closely and found that daily self-weighting was associated with decreased risk of regaining 2.3 kilograms or 5 pounds on average. And another feedback nudge that is very good and useful is having a food diary, even just for a week. And it's easier now with the different mobile apps, right? Seeing what you can eat can actually double your weight loss. So just to emphasize the importance of self-weighting, right? One study showed that participants who weighted themselves daily for 6 months lost 13 more pounds on average than those who weighted themselves less frequently. Furthermore, another study showed that people who weighted themselves every day ate roughly 350 fewer calories per day than those who did not. And understanding what you are eating can help improve your diet and lose weight. So luckily enough, at least for all of us that are here, obviously, we know how to work with our computers, and we have our mobile devices that we can download the free apps. And there is a huge variety of different food dairy apps. And here is a list of few with the highest ranking based on both users and health experts. So for instance, MyFitnessPal is user-friendly, and some users says that MyFitnessPal is very easy to use. On the other hand, we have chronometers or chronometer or whatever they call this, is much more detailed and it gives a better picture of nutrient profile food. And actually most of accredited registered dietitians teaching at the top schools such as NYU agree that Chronometer is the most accurate and comprehensive nutrition tracking app by far. And there's this feature also, if you have a dietitian, you can share all your data from this Chronometer with your dietitians or whoever you want to share your data with. So I think the awareness is undersold, and it might be what you are eating or how much you weigh, but it's also about knowing that life is messy, and to enjoy it, we need some flexibility, or that you simply feel better when you eat better. So that's why I like the idea of starting with the small changes. Maybe switch something you do a lot. So for example, like eating breakfast or snacking or drinking. So regarding breakfast, right, you can make those small changes and switch your average cereal for some oatmeal or shredded wheat, or handful of almonds instead of bag of chips, or maybe switch 3 of your calorie drinks a day for water, which might actually chip away a pound a week, or even better, it might make you feel better about yourself. It might make you feel better in your body. And another angle is adding instead of subtracting. So increasing your dietary fiber is associated with positive health effects. And fiber can be found in beans or apples, berries, broccoli, brown rice, or brancioles, right? And it's recommended to consume 25 to 30 grams of fiber roughly per day. So I would emphasize the idea of pushing healthier food rather than just restricting or fencing off the other food. There is another angle, such as social support, which can actually help our eating behaviors. In one study where people were I'm sorry, in one study where people were either going to eat alone versus having 3 or more friends or family members supporting them, maintaining weight loss for 10 months, it jumped from 24 to 66%. So only 24% of the subjects were able to maintain their lost weight, where 66% of those who had the support in their closest ones were able to keep their weight off in full for over 10 months. And also on a subject of support, right? Having a dietitian might help, even if it's just online. Also, activity is very interesting. Research shows that people who are active, even if they have obesity, live longer than skinny sedentaries. And it's easier to drown calories through diet, right? But I think it's important to know that research shows that people who exercise have more success at maintaining their weight. Another point about healthy eating focuses on this long-term play and attitude. And as restrictive diets have proven hard to sustain, many are now turning from the individual to more to what surrounds the individual. So changing our eating environment to make it easier to make the right choices day after day. And we could call this like choice architecture or redesign or your choice architecture. And it involves 2 types of so-called trigger awareness. So first, it's very important knowing that our world is full of triggers toward unhealthier eating, convenient, healthy, shiny foods, right? Or supersizing, marketing. As some scientists point out, most of us don't overeat because we are hungry. And secondly, it's awareness what nudges you personally. Humans are creatures of habit. We usually do the same thing and the same time each day, rather than doing new things or different things. And creating a good habit improves one's health, ability to cope, self-esteem, and self-confidence. However, most of us have some bad habits, right? We have some bad ones that are actually triggered by certain cues. So let's say certain foods or pastry at a coffee counter or specific time of a day, like 11 or 3, are predictable stressors. So the point here is to re-engineer those small behaviors or small triggers that move you from mindless overeating to mindless better eating. So maybe you can change something in your kitchen, right? Maybe right now you leave the cookies on a counter that are more likely to be eaten out, but same is true for fruits and vegetables. So maybe you put out some couple pieces of carrots, right? And string beans.
See what will happen. Also, use small plates, glasses, supersized containers should be eliminated from here. And all these changes might help you to consume far less. Also, to get out more of the redesign, it takes some self-knowledge. So are you nighttime nibbler or emotional eater? Well, for me, it's that when I have a bag of popcorn at home, I can't stop eating those. So I simply for my kitchen stock. Or if so, I only purchase the small 1 serving size pouches. The final behavior is more of an attitude here. I call it 80-20, or some people call it 80-20. So if you make a healthier choice 80% of the time, and your 20% is not too high calories, you should be thrilled to having a piece of dark chocolate or a good meal or some pie, because we're doing this for a long term, right? So I'm not really looking for perfection. I'm looking for consistency. So in the end, I hope I've got you to think a bit differently about how you eat. So instead of investing in a single diet, maybe a portfolio of behaviors. Instead of small changes or like small changes over big changes, and single ingredient food over multi-ingredient and processed foods. Having dinner at home, more self-awareness, depending less on constant willpower, and more on a little tweaks to make the mindless, healthy eating more likely.
And my final point is about the importance of healthy at every size, right? So yes, there are some individuals who want and need a weight loss. Obesity is a risk factor for multiple diseases. But we can all start today working with our current factory settings to be more mindful of what we eat, maybe move more or have a little bit of self-love, and start to think more about what it's healthy to eat rather than what not to eat. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for coming today on this big month of nutrition. And if you have any questions or comments, please, I'm more than happy to discuss anything with you.
Thank you so much, Michaela. That was amazing. And I really loved your slide designs. They were great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I also think that I noticed a question that popped up in the chat earlier. Someone asked what promotes wound healing, which is slow being a senior. I'm not sure if you would know this, but I saw that.
I do not have a specialty for that, but there's definitely some nutrients and minerals that can help the wound healing. From what I know, vitamin C is very helpful in making the scars. So definitely make sure that you pay attention for your vitamin C. That is actually recommended not to overexceed 1,000 of milligrams a day. There's definitely guidelines that can be easily accessible online as well for different age categories as well. And those have different recommendations amounts for either if it's vitamin D or anything else. So there's definitely things that we can do for that.
Thank you. And then I just see more of a request about contact information, if you'll be providing that at the end, or how people can get into contact with you.
Of course, I can add that right away to my presentation and share it again. But you can reach me if you can. I can actually put it to chat. If everyone has access to chat, I'll just put it here. I think that's going to be more easy. So it's ml6609@nyu.edu. Oh, and I'm sending that directly to Cheryl. I'm sorry for that. So I'll do that again. NYU.edu.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
And then I see another question about specific recommended food groups, plant-based for high blood pressure.
So for high blood pressure, as I mentioned in my presentation, focus definitely on products actually limit those products that have a lot of added sugars in it. As you can see on those food labels that we were going through, the foods that have a lot of saturated fat in them, try to avoid these. And also food that have a lot of sodium in them, which, as I mentioned before, definitely limit them to no more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. So I think this is the most important to keep in mind, and also increase your foods that are high in potassium, as we mentioned, right? Iron, calcium. Those are very important, especially also for elderly people who might be experiencing also other health conditions.
And then I see another question. What are your thoughts on whole food plant-based diet?
Well, again, as I mentioned, I think it's very sustainable and very good diet. It's a good point. Like there's not that much bad about things that are naturally grown. It's a food plant-based diet, whole foods, right? So it means they're minimally processed. They're minimally processed or not processed at all, which is great. And those are the ones that I really highly encourage everyone to include in your diet the most. And try to limit those bad ones, like the processed ones. Ideal would be to completely get rid of them from your diet. But of course, it's not possible, especially in this age where we are surrounded by bad stuff as well.
Yeah. And then I see another comment. Any additional observations in the context of insulin resistance?
This is not my expertise, but regarding the insulin, there's this low glycemic index diet, right? that shows that different foods have different effects on our blood and the blood glucose levels. There are some that actually release the glucose levels in very steady point, whereas there are some that spikes it all the way up. So it might be helpful to look at that. And there's a lot of research actually happening right now on this insulin resistance, right? So insulin is basically a hormone that is released in our body when we eat too much sugar, and insulin is responsible for taking up this sugar so your body can cope with it. And yes, insulin resistance is basically where our body starts to be the receptors that we have that are actually communicating with this insulin in our body are like more resistant, and that's how we develop the diabetes, especially the type 2 diabetes.
I guess what I'm asking is, given the framework you're describing, especially the Mediterranean diet, taking insulin resistance into account, would that simply suggest not just the total amount of food and types of food through the day, but the time of getting more small portions, roughly equal caloric index through the day to smooth
Exactly.
the blood,
Okay,
the blood reaction.
Right. So the Mediterranean diet or Mediterranean lifestyle, as I mentioned, it's very sustainable for a majority of people, for a majority of group of people. There's this diet for insulin that you actually should see the dietitian specialist. They can be of a huge help accordingly to spread those diets or like spread the meals throughout the day. So there's different. I'm sorry.
I think so. In the usual yardstick, try for 4 small equal portions through the day instead of one huge one at night, and
That's
an apple for breakfast. Kind of divide your total caloric intake for the day into 4 or even 5 smaller meals, roughly equally spaced. Is that basically a smart strategy?
It's much more, yes, definitely, especially for people with diabetes. So yes, I'm sorry, I didn't get your question at first. Yeah. Definitely. As I mentioned before, actually, it's regular meals, right? So it doesn't mean like overeating yourself for breakfast and then don't eat anything at all, right? You know, the sustainable part really, and also it keeps our energy levels high when we spread the diet or our meals throughout the day. So you don't have like huge spike of energy in the morning maybe, and then you don't even know like how to do that throughout the day till evening. So yes, thank you. It's a very good point. Definitely.
My gym trainer said, you're going to go to the gym, grab an apple on the way, never work out in the gym hungry.
Yeah, there's different opinions on this, and also a lot of research is going as well, but I would agree with that actually having some food before, especially, you know, like those carbohydrates that are easily flowing into your blood, right? It's very smart. So definitely eating an apple, that is our complex carbohydrate, but there's a lot of fructose. It goes to your bloodstream very quickly. So you have energy to work out, and definitely not fading out of being completely hungry.
Thank you. I see another question. Which diet is better for PCOS insulin resistance, DASH or Mediterranean?
So this really depends on a severity of a diabetes or disease that you might be experiencing with the insulin resistance, right? It's really hard to tell. There are different diets or dietary patterns that are focused more on this insulin resistance or diabetes, right? DASH diet, as I mentioned before, it's a lifestyle, but it was mainly developed for people with a hypertension. And maybe if you can recall, there's a lot of similarities actually between them, where Mediterranean lifestyle put emphasis on what is good, and, you know, like this lifestyle that you should have, like socializing with people, eating with friends, but also on this huge group of fruits and vegetables, right? Or whole grains or legumes. But on the other hand, the DASH diet, it's actually putting emphasis of like to avoid those meals that causes hypertension. So again, foods that are high in saturated fats, high in added sugars, and high in sodium. So for diabetes, it's you know, it's pretty much, there's a lot of similarities to those, but I would definitely recommend to look more into diets that are focused on diabetes.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I see in the chat, but if anyone else has any last minute questions, feel free to type them in or ask aloud. I know we're running a bit low on time, so we have 2 minutes. I don't want to keep everyone too late. So any other questions? Oh, I see Cheryl's hand is up. Feel free to go ahead.
One of the things I do here now is I'm in my 70s, my husband's in the 80s, and we're members of the PSS local senior group. We've had a lot of exercise and activities online in Zoom, and I find that so motivating. If it wasn't online, I don't think I would be maintaining a healthy level of activity for my age.
Thank you for sharing, Cheryl. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Although this whole COVID situation, right, it made us trapped in front of our screens, but on the same time, it brought some benefits, I would say, for some of us, right? We definitely improved our skills with the technology, and we are more connected online, especially with people that we were barely seeing before. So thank you for sharing.
If I may chime in and say, Michaela, fantastic job. What great information. I think you really brought some great strategies. Yes, great work and beautiful presentation as well. Thanks so much for your time today.
I appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, thank you. I second that completely. I think it was great and really informative and easy to comprehend and integrate into our own lives. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much for all valuable feedback and all the comments that were here. Thank you.
It was excellent, Michaela, and I hope that you can come back and do another one for the CTSD.
I hope so too. I'll be more than very much looking forward for that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I think we're all out of
Taylor,
time.
when do you graduate?
This May.
And you know, are we going after that?
Well, hopefully Whale Cornell. Yeah.
All the best.
Yeah. Thank you very
Good
much.
job.
Thank you. It's a great journey. Thank you very much. And I wish everybody a great day and stay healthy.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.